Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Online Video Mastery Pro Trainer Series. I'm really glad to have you here with us today. We have a wonderful guest who is an old friend of mine and a colleague, a guy I've known for 30 some years. And if you don't know anything about online video mastery, what we're all about is that we teach people how to recruit, train, and educate using smartphone videos. So what we're going to be doing today, I'm going to be bringing on my old buddy, Charles Werner, who is the former fire chief here in the city of Charlottesville. And he's been up to a whole lot of stuff since he retired from the fire department. What Charles is going to present on is the title of his program today is Being the Best and Becoming Indispensable. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Charles here, and then I'll bring him on. And while I'm doing a little housekeeping, I want to point out that this is an informal presentation in the sense that if you have questions or comments that you'd like to bring up, go ahead and hop into the comments. And while Charles is talking, I'll keep my eye on the comments. And if you have questions or anything you'd like to share or ask, just put them in there and I will bring them to Charles's attention. So a little bit of a backgrounder. I'm going to have to read this, you guys, because it's been cut down. Let's just put it that way. Charles's background is pretty amazing. So he is a retired fire chief from the city of Charlottesville. He's been in public safety for 48 years. He served for 37 years as a firefighter with the Charlottesville, Virginia Fire Department. And for the last 10 years, he was fire chief. Following retirement, Charles served 2 years as senior advisor and acting deputy state coordinator for the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. He has served in numerous local, state, and national leadership roles and on various public safety topics. He presently serves as director and founder of DRONERESPONDERS and is a certified FAA remote pilot. One thing that is really cool I want to point out here is DRONERESPONDERS is the largest and leading nonprofit organization in the world that's dedicated to public safety drone programs. And Charles basically created it out of the whole cloth. In the last 3 years, it has grown from nothing to over 7,800 members in 87 countries. So, and last but certainly not least, this just happened today. So you guys are among the first to hear about this. The American National Standards Institute, otherwise known as ANSI, awarded Charles a 2023 recipient of their Meritorious Service Award. They say that he was selected to receive this award in recognition of his many contributions to the ANSI Federation and the voluntary standardization community. And I can tell you that drone programs around the world would be nothing without standards. And honestly, those standards would be nothing without my friend Charles. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Charles on now and let him introduce himself with anything he'd like to say.
Hey, Chuck, thanks. And thanks to all of you that are out there watching. What I'm going to do today is to try to share with you what I've learned over decades, wishing someone else had told me at the very beginning of my career so that I could take advantage of all these tips and tricks, if you will, to be able to look like I am the brightest star in the room. And that's what I hope to do today.
Sounds good. Well, welcome, Charles, and I'm going to go ahead and set this up so you can go through your slides.
All right, so as you can see, the title of today's program is Being the Best and Becoming Indispensable. You know, a lot of the things I'm going to cover today are common sense, but I'm learning that common sense isn't so common anymore. So with that, I'm going to not assume that you know all these things. Some of the things you're going to know just because they're just things you learn, but I'm going to reinforce them regardless. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is to know yourself, know your strengths, your weaknesses. But what we've learned over time is focus more on your strengths than on your weaknesses, because your strengths are easier to build upon as opposed to really trying to change weaknesses. You can do that as you go along, but the best way to do it is focus on your strengths. As far as a career, find a career that you love. Keep looking. Don't just accept something and continue to working, because the longer you stay somewhere that you're not happy, the harder it is to leave. And when you find that career or that field, might not be the right career at that choice at that time, but the field that you're in, find your niche. What can you really grasp onto what can you really enjoy working on to become someone who everybody comes to learn about that topic. And then develop a 5-year plan. It doesn't have to be down to specifics, but what are your 5-year plan? Where would you like to see yourself in 5 years? Because typically without a plan, you just kind of wander along. A plan puts things in your mind that, believe it or not, indirectly and subconsciously, you start working toward those plans. And then to the bottom right, just to reinforce this, is Confucius said, choose a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. For me, that was becoming a volunteer firefighter first. So I was willing to do it for free. And so when I got paid for it, I really never worked a day in my life. So I've enjoyed every day of it. So here's some general tips. 1, be courteous, kind, and helpful. Chuck always jokes with me a lot because whenever I see somebody, they say, what are you doing here? What do you think? And I simply say, I'm here to help. And that immediately opens the door of people going, oh, okay. And then I say, how can I help? And they start telling the story. The other is greet people with a smile. A smile will open more doors than you might imagine. It's that anticipation, that interest when you look at those people. Listen and speak last. And I'll give you a quick story on this. So we had some legislation that was trying to go through Congress, and it was to give better communications for public safety. But we had some opponents from the commercial side. And I was asked to speak on a panel in one of the congressional hearing rooms. And there were 4 other people in front of me. Or there were 5 of us on a panel. And I asked to be last, something that you should always think to do if you're on a panel, because you get to hear everybody else's positions and you can address them in addition to what you may have already thought. So when it got down to it, they gave their opposing positions. I was the only one there supporting from public safety. And I had a mentor who said, okay, wait till they finish. Let them say their thing. And then you pause for a moment where everybody looks at you, which I did. The room was silent. And he said, say these things. And this is what I'll just go through it. I said, how dare each and every one of you standing here opposing the communications for public safety when none of you walk into a burning building, none of you are shot at by criminals, and you never put yourself in harm's way. How dare you? The room was absolutely quiet. Wow. And then I went through and made the case of why this was so important. That's what made the news the next day. Fire chief embarrasses panel. That was the headline.
Wow.
So, and I'll tell you something else too, is always be the one that's trying to help and get to the yes. When you're trying to work on something, you want to get to the yes with people. And I was told another example of a code enforcement issue. They were asking about changing some things in the city. And they said, we like to do these new urban planning pods. I can't remember what they're called. That means that they wanted to create these cul-de-sacs and they wanted to make smaller roads, which meant access for fire trucks were difficult. And they said, you're not going to agree with this, right? And I said, no, I'm going to agree with it. And they said, well, how can you do that? You've told us we've got to have access. I said, put sprinklers in the buildings. My deal is about managing risk. So you put sprinklers in the buildings, my access to buildings is not as important because they're 99% effective at putting fires out and saving lives. So that's the other part, is find the win-win and find how to get to it. The other is learn from parents, teachers, friends, colleagues. Be a sponge. Listen to what they have to, because experience is the best teacher. And what I'm hoping that I can help you do is to avoid some of the mistakes by learning that, as those of us have made those mistakes ahead of you. Now, I know some of you are going to be hardheads and you're going to have to learn it the hard way. And I'm guilty of some of that too. So just understand. The other, be open to change. Become a change agent. Challenge the status quo. That's how we change. That's how we improve. And in today's age, don't do what a lot of people are doing. Don't cancel people out. Our goal in life is, and the best way we get to where we want to both be, is that we are open to each other's decisions. We can agree to disagree at the end of the day, but what you will find is that there's a lot more to be learned and a lot more to be gained by listening to the opposing positions. So don't fear failure. Embrace it and learn from it. We're all going to do things that are not going to turn out the way we want. I've got a couple of those things. Don't need to tell you what they are. But I learned, okay, don't do that. Don't do that. And I asked other people, where did I go wrong? What was, how would I could have done better? And they helped. And again, actively seek help to help others. You know, my fire chief, who was my predecessor, he was really great when he got me as the deputy chief. He said, okay, look, I want you to go to every city department and help them. I was really into technology, so I knew web pages. I knew how to design stuff. I knew PowerPoint early on, and I was really good at computers. And so I went and worked in every city department. And I came back, and he said, so do you know why I did that? And I said, yeah, I think so. You know, I got to learn people. But he said, no. He said, you're making deposits. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you're making deposits in the account. Now later you're going to need to withdraw from that, but you're already going to have your balance in there so that you've got something to draw from. But he said, I will tell you, when you do this, you will get 10 times more than what you ever gave, because that's what they remember. So the other thing is seek consensus rather than unanimity. You don't have to have unanimous consent. We all need to go into a situation of saying, let's determine what we can live with. We all get something, but none of us get everything. That's the compromising idea of how to be in the right place. I've been on so many organizations at the national level that consensus idea has really helped us get over the hump, because it puts people in a different frame of mind. And read, research, and identify the best in the area that you're working in. And I'll tell you a story about how I've used that. So I'm reading stories, and I'll see something about drones in a new area, and I will get the name of the person, and I will immediately go to LinkedIn. I will look them up on LinkedIn. I will connect with them on LinkedIn, and then I will begin a conversation. That does two things. One is you tell them, hey, listen, I see that you're doing fantastic work in this area, which really opens doors. You know, always say good things about other people, and they're willing to help you. And I want to learn from what you're doing. And so two things happen. You learn, but you also create a relationship. And we'll talk more about relationships in a little bit. Search for the most knowledgeable, correspond with, interview them, and last but not least, find a mentor. If there's somebody out there that really knows the ropes, that can help you, that's willing, take advantage of that. They'll walk you through every step, and they'll help you if you run into problems. So relationships, trust, and networking. This is really important. So here you are all by yourself. But if you're going to be successful, oops, one too far. You got to network, and you got to create trust in the larger group. It's that larger group that makes things happen, that changes the world. You by yourself are going to be a very lonely person and not be very successful. And what I wanted to make sure I share with you, if there's not anything else that you get out of this presentation, is that relationships are the foundation of your success. This is the most important aspect of your career, but not just your career, also your life. Relationships make the world go round. And this is all the stuff that goes into those relationships: confidence, relationships, trust, believing, community, honesty, intuition, faith, thesis. You get the picture. I'm not going to read them all because we'd be here all day, but that's just to give you that visual. So now I'm going to tell you about a program that I was involved with, that I got a chance to learn from, that helps you understand yourself and each other. And that's emergenetics. And what it does is it allows you to discover your natural strengths. It allows you to understand others, to work better in teams, and to understand how you think and behave, and to make better decisions ultimately. So this slide shows that when we look at this, there are 3 behavioral attributes, and they are expressiveness, flexibility, and assertiveness. And when you go through this program, it actually evaluates you as, where are you in that? Like, you know, are you very open and expressive, or are you flexible, or are you assertive? And where are you on those scales of things? So you might be a little flexible, you might be very expressive, you might be very assertive. So that gives you that metric. But then there's the 4 thinking attributes. And you know, when people go into art galleries and they can look at the same kind of picture, but they almost all have different perceptions of that picture. So when you say, what does it mean? One person might say, well, it looks like it's a storm. Another person says, no, it looks like it's just conceptual art, and so on. That's because the thinking attributes are different. So those 4 attributes are analytical, conceptual, structural, and social. And what that means is, it goes through and gives you a score in each of these areas as where do you sit on the spectrum. When you're looking at analytical, you're looking for the value proposition. What's good about this? Why should I be doing this? If you're conceptual, you're saying, what's the innovation? What's new? How do I pull more things into it, get more people involved? If you're structural, you're in that spreadsheets. You want data. You want the information very, very so. You want the rules. Give me the rules. I want to live by the rules. And then there's social. And that's, how does this all apply to people? So when you're writing a document or a program, it's good to address all these issues. So when you're going through it to sell your program, you say, well, let's see. Here's the structure. Here's what it's all about. Here's the framework. Here's the value of this program. And you put that in there. And then you say, and here's how it's innovative. And you put that in there. And then you put how it's going to be good for our people. And then you've addressed all the issues for whatever quadrant people are in. Now, as I told Chuck, I'm classified as 1 in a million, that I'm actually almost equal in every quadrant. And what that means is I can easily switch from one to the other. And when you're talking to me, I get it. It might take me a minute to switch over, but I can easily transition over. The people that might be all structural and you start talking about conceptual, they go, oh, please get away from me. That's breaking the rules. It's outside the norm. So that's the whole point of how this all works. Then here, this gives it more of a breakdown. I'm not going to go into this slide for you. You'll be able to get these slides from Chuck, but it basically goes and gives a more description of what I just shared with you.
Just real quick, let me interrupt to say that a little anecdote on my side was I was training a designer who was working for me in my design business years and years ago. And we were sitting in front of my 1985 Macintosh, and I was trying to explain to her how things worked. And I'm a visual learner and a visual teacher. So I think in visuals, and I use visual language. So I'm not sure exactly how this fits into that quadrant, but it's so interesting how it maps to the idea of learning from the person that you're talking to or you're trying to convince or persuade so that you can communicate with them properly. So I was saying, see this and look at that and everything, and describing pictures. And at some point, she must have either been structural or analytical, and she just literally sat back in her chair and waved her hands at me, and she said, stop with the pictures. Stop with the pictures. I don't know what you're talking about. And I was shocked. I thought I was explaining it beautifully, but no, I was not on her wavelength. So this is super important. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I can't stand that. You just broke the rules. You just got outside my structure.
Sorry, man.
No, but yeah, I'm okay with that. I got it. It's like, okay, I just switched over to the other one. So, and what we did is after we got scored, and I think you can look on this on your own. I think you can actually do this online yourself to find out where you sit in this. What we also did is we did this as all city leadership. And once we did this, we ended up having the analysis and a badge. So you had your badge with your quadrants so that when you came into a meeting, you could see what the other person was, and you immediately have that connection through the program. But I also know, okay, this is what you like. Okay, so you're structural. I'm going to talk all about the spreadsheets and the rules, and the other person is like, oh man, this is great. So it just gave insights as how to operate together.
Cool.
So one of the other programs that I really learned from a lot was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And this was really making sure you understand how this all works as far as relationships. So initially, you're independence. You're yourself. You're just you. And in this situation, you want to start doing things to build up to independence, to where you can work more independently because you've accomplished these other things. And so habit 1 is be proactive. Be thinking about what to do next. Habit 2 is begin with the end in mind. Think what you want it to look like. What's the outcome you're trying to achieve? And habit 3 is put first things first. Make sure you put things in order that need to get done to get where you want to get, or you're going to keep stumbling over yourself. You're going to keep doing and backing up and going and backing up. Once you've done those 3, you have what's called a private victory. And then you want to get to independence. That's where you get to independence. But then you want to get to interdependence, where you're working with each other. And, the one thing that if I learned anything about COVID from a positive perspective is that we are all interdependent on each other. There is nobody that's better than anybody, although some think so. We found out that if we don't have the nurses and the doctors and the firefighters and the EMS people, and we don't have the truckers, and we don't have the people in the stores, and if we don't have all these services that we depend on, becomes a tough life. And so we started seeing how important all these people were. Oops, I think I skipped over here. Slide. So then we talk about habit 4 is think win-win. Again, this is going to be that thing where you're figuring out, how can I do something that will get you where you want to be and get me where I want to be at the same time? Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Listen to the other people, understand where they are, and then you can have a better response and a better conversation. And 6 is to synergize, work to create something bigger than what it is unto itself. And then you'll see the circle is habit 7, and that's sharpen the saw. And that means that you have to take time to rest, to relax, to disconnect. And then you come back re-energized to start all over again with the next week. And the other part of that is really trying to make sure you maintain a balance between the family and career. So then there's the circles of control, influence, and concern. And I want to make sure you know the difference, because it's very important in your thinking. Your circle of control is you. That's everything that you do, everything that you say, everything that you create. That's you. You have total control of what you do. The second circle is the circle of influence. This is where you are able to influence in many ways. And I'll give you an example of how I did that in the fire department, and how it's important as a supervisor, manager, or leader. It's important you understand this. Many people will try to hold on to the power or authority they have. And what I learned over time is that the more of my power and authority I delegate or share or let people learn in, the more I have time to do even higher level things from my bosses. But it also creates succession planning, because you're training people to know what you know, to do what needs to be done when you're not here. But the key to this is the more you give away and share your influence, the more influence you have. That's a really important lesson to learn. And the last one is the circle of concern. And again, this all comes from the 7 habits for highly effective leaders. The circle of concern is, I'm concerned it's going to rain. I'm concerned that it's going to be hot. I'm concerned. Well, you can't do anything about that. So quit wasting time on the circle of concern. Focus on the 2 circles that you have control of.
Interesting.
And then to go along with that, a prayer that's out there commonly, whether you want to be a prayer or you're into religion or not, it doesn't matter. This speaks unto itself. And it says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. There's nothing worse than beating your head against a wall of something you have no influence over or no chance of changing. So take that one and let it help guide you through your life. So relationships are internal to the organization that you're with. And again, this is about being the best in your organization and becoming indispensable. They are external and they're public. And you need to understand how these relationships work in whatever you're doing, so that you can be as effective as you can be in each one of these relationship areas. So how do you develop relationships? And that means internal to your organization. How do you go about doing that? Well, that means getting to know the other people, talking, and actually back up. First thing, listening. What do other people do? What do they like? Get to know something about them. Make it more to where it's an interesting conversation. Again, help them if they can be helped, and know who you can go to ask for help. So you create this give and take type relationship within the organization, and learn from each other. External to organizations is going to be, how do you represent yourself to other people that are in other organizations that you're working with? What value can you bring to the table? Again, helping in advance helps set you up for making those deposits in the accounts we talked about earlier, and being able to withdraw or get assistance from them in the future. And then external to the community. When you're doing things in the public, that's a whole different place. It's very public. It might involve the media. It might involve other civic organizations. And you want to be able to, again, go into those meetings and those discussions prepared of how you can be the most helpful in those environments and in those communities that you're working with. So one of the things that, I was always scratching my head, how these people do all this great stuff and get things from one place to another. And I was in one of the national leadership roles I was in, and we had a consultant firm come in and they put this out in front of us. And it was like, it just opened my mind of, okay, we just took this whole mess of chaos in my head and put it into a methodical process of going forward. Now, what you see here is it says this is sample text because this is just done to give you an example that you put in the description that fits each of these areas. But the first thing that you start with is understanding and describing the current state. What is the current state of whatever it is you're trying to change? What does it look like? What does it mean? How does it operate? And then you define, what do you want the future state to look like? Is we know it's over here. What do you want to change? What do we want to do? And what do we want it to look like? And then in the middle is the gap. How do we get from the current state to the future state? And that means looking at the people in your organization, the processes that you're working with, and technology. And so then it's going through and modifying those and creating plans that address those issues to get to the future state. Now, this is very important that you work with the people in your organization to define these things, to identify how to overcome the gaps and give those recommendations going forward. But this is one of the most useful tools I ever found, because when you come into a room and there's a problem, people are doing stuff, and people are just kind of talking and going in different directions. And you can say, wait a minute. Can we define what the current state looks like? And people start doing that. And then you say, what do we want it to look like? And then they start looking at you as, you really know something. You've got this thing down. And then you start talking about, with people, process, and technology, what are the pieces to that puzzle to build the bridge to get from the current state to the future state? And this is really fun to watch. When you start having everybody understanding the methodology to get there, it puts everybody on the same track. Because have you ever been in one of those rooms and you've got just chaos and everybody just keeps talking and they're giving their points of view about this, that, and the other, and there's no mechanism. And so you get frustrated and you're sitting there going, you ever had that thought, why am I here? Who is in charge?
Yeah.
But then again, this is what helps make you become indispensable, because you have knowledge of a process.
That is really cool, Charles. Just going back to that for a second, I want to point out that this actually is a PowerPoint template that you can go into PowerPoint and download, right? So this is something that I think that this is really a core tool to this presentation, and it makes so much sense when you think about it, that bringing all those minds together instead of having that chaos, to just give them two tasks. One of them is, let's talk about what it is like right now. Then let's talk about where we want to be in a year or 2 months or whatever the time frame is, and then work backwards. Like Charles is saying, the people, the process, and the technology. And pretty soon, someplace in that process, you've got everybody in the room swimming in the same direction you are. And that helps you arrive at that future state that you all envision together, which means you've got buy-in to create it. And it will help manifest it.
And I'll tell you a story. So in emergency management, I'll give you an example of how this plays out. So we have an exercise, and the exercise is that we've got some kind of natural disaster or some kind of incident that's occurring. We don't know what it is. And in real life, how this works is we're all getting different information from different places. We may be getting calls from 911. There may be multiple calls. There's different information. So the exercise was, the first thing we need to do is to define what the current state is. And so we probably had 20 people in the room that all had different pieces of information. And the first thing we had to do was, who has information, and go through and get that. But every time we got about five people revealing what they had, it got off track. And it was like, well, this looks like it's this, and this looks like it's that. And we think that it might be this that's occurring. And I said, stop. And they're like, well, I said, does anybody else have information? And we got 5 more. And it changed the picture of what was there to begin with. The whole 5 pieces were not all of the pieces. And so it changed. Okay, we get 5 more pieces of information. Here we go again. Well, it looks like, and people are guessing, and I think they're trying to challenge, like I knew what it was, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, stop. And we went through 5 more, and it changed everything again. Now it was this, that, and the other. And People were doing the same guessing. And so then we did 5 more. Well, no, then we got the, or I said, stop. We did 5 more. And the whole thing changed back to where it was a very simple thing that really didn't need to have anything done.
Huh.
So if the example was, we've got a waterway and there's green stuff in the waterway. What is it? What's happening? And it went through, being something very contaminated to something killing fish to where, no, at the end of the day, it didn't harm anything. It was a non-harmful ingredient that was put in the water for whatever reason. And so all these ideas about we need to get this, we need to get people moving, and we need to get the boom set up so we can capture all the stuff. No. We found all the information. And that was the whole exercise. The exercise was, what's the future state? And then from that, you decide. Now, if it was a hazardous material, we'd say, what's the future state? What do we need to do to stop this? And now we look at what people do we have, what process we have, what technology we have, what equipment or decontamination stuff do we need to use. But that was the story of make sure you have all the information in your current state before you try to do the future state, because otherwise you're going to miss some things or overcompensate for something you didn't need to.
It wasn't St. Patrick's Day, was it?
No, it wasn't St. Patrick's Day. That would be the question: why is all the beer green?
Right, exactly.
I think we have a contamination issue. We need to fix this. So the other thing about the roadmap of getting to successful project fruition is you got to have dates and milestones. So once you decide what that is, and sometimes they may be very quickly solved, so they may be done in a week. In other cases, it might be multiple years because you've got to do certain things before other things can happen. And it may require legislation. It may require rule changes. It may be necessary for budgetary stuff to come into play. But without dates, things often don't get done. And without deadlines, things can stretch out for much longer than you want them to be. So this is just saying, create that roadmap, put the timelines, put some milestones that says, are we moving? Are we being successful? And if we're not, we stop along the way and say, what do we need to adjust? So, I wanted to put this out here about change. And I had said, be a change agent, be accepting to change. And if you look through these, I picked a couple that stand out, and it's like, change is the only constant. Change is only constant in life. One's ability to adapt to those changes will determine your success in life. Benjamin Franklin. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So again, that's where if you lock yourself into one view and one observation, you're not going to probably see what's there. The greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change his future by merely changing his attitude. That was Oprah Winfrey. And then change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. Martin Luther King. To improve is to change, and to be perfect is to change often. Winston Churchill. And then the only constant is change, and the rate of change is increasing. And if anybody isn't seeing how technology is dramatically changing the environment we're in some good ways, and in some ways, some very bad ways. And then the last one, it's on the left here, is change is inevitable, but your growth is optional, and it's really up to you.
Those are great. I love that. Change is inevitable and growth is optional, because you see a lot of people opting out in the face of change, going back to the structural types. Very cool. So
then I just put together one example. There's a lot of different examples, but this is one example that you can use for a change management model. And the importance of having a change management model is it gets everybody in the same direction. It gives people an understanding of the flow and how this is going to work and how they fit into each one of these roles. When you don't, you kind of have chaos, and everybody has a different idea of how we should go about making the change. And change management is critical to being successful. You've got to do it the right way. You've got to involve the people. You've got to create the teamwork. You've got to motivate. And your whole goal is to continue to improve and make the situation better for all involved. But this gives you that a little bit of a tool just to give that visual for people to understand and a model to work from. So I don't know if any of you heard about the book, Who Moved My Cheese? But this is really one of those change lessons that I'm going to use. It's kind of fun to talk about. And basically, let me just tell you the story about this. There's two mice we'll talk about here. One's There's cheese that's in a place in the house, in the building, and in this area they're in, and suddenly the cheese is gone. And the one mouse sits there and says, okay, I'm gonna wait for the cheese. And the other mouse says, well, I'm gonna go look around and see what else is here, and goes around all the different areas, and sure enough, in another area he finds this new cheese. And so he comes back and he tells the other mouse, hey, listen, I found new cheese. And the other mouse says, I really like the cheese I had. I want that cheese. I'm going to stay here. And so the other mouse says, okay. And he goes back over and he gets back over there and he looks and he's, oh, wow, there's like 4 or 5 different flavors of cheese here. And he's savoring it up and he stops and he goes back and tells the other one, hey, listen, there's new cheese over here. There's different flavors of it. And the other mouse says, I'm going to stay here and wait for the cheese to come back. You get my point. You can stay in the same place you are and you will not go anywhere. In this case, you might starve. Or you can go to find the new cheese and just kind of relish all the different flavors that are out there and enjoy life a lot better. So to talk about that, it basically says, look, change happens, and they keep moving the cheese. Anticipate change. Get ready for the cheese to move. Already be thinking about, okay, change is going to happen. What am I going to do next? Monitor the change. Smell the cheese often so you can tell when it's getting old. And this is kind of like technology. When you start seeing that you're using an iPhone 7 and we're in iPhone 14, might be time to change the cheese. Adapt to change quickly. Look at it, learn what you can, be right there in with the move. Don't wait until it moves so far to one direction that you're having a hell of a time catching up. Keep in with the change. Keep up with what's happening. And when it comes to technology, if you got kids, talk to your kids. Your kids can help you through a lot of stuff and do lots of things because they're loving it. They're born into this new technology world. And then move with the cheese. As the change happens, move with it and enjoy the change. Savor the adventure and enjoy the taste of the new cheese. Sometimes it's all about the journey. It's not necessarily the destination. And be ready to change quickly and enjoy it again. They keep moving the cheese. That's the story, and it's going to keep happening.
That's great.
And with that, I am finished.
So we don't have any questions in the comments area. So I got to figure it's because you covered everything so well. We've still got a few minutes if anybody'd like to post something in the comment section, and I'll make sure Charles sees that and can respond to it. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to think of anything that you might want to post there. So let me get this screen back like this. I really do appreciate it, Charles. That was terrific.
Well, and I think that your reference to drone responders earlier is probably kind of a culmination of all these things coming together. Is what I was able to do is I had created relationships throughout the international community over years, working on different things, helping people with other stuff. I guess my wife would tell you the one problem I have is saying no. So I'm constantly taking emails and helping people with different things. But when we started Drone Responders in 2019 of April, it was kind of the first organization of its type. And the first thing that we did was to create a resource center that basically had, and that's droneresponders.org in case any of you are interested. It's free membership. We created the resource center so that we could be helpful, to create a place where people go and not have to start from scratch, where a lot of organizations started from scratch. They didn't have to. And then we built on that to start providing instructional webinars, and it grew quickly. I was excited when I had 500 members. I thought that was going to be great. And then it was 1,000, and then it was 2,000. And then, as you mentioned, we just, hit 7,800 and participation from 87 countries. And I just am blown away at the reception. And the other thing that came out of COVID that was positive is that because we were all working virtually, I ended up speaking at almost every international conference around the world, which I would have never been able to do without COVID. So that extended our exposure out in the community. But when I first started reaching out to people, I got a lot of organizations coming on board very quickly just because they knew who I was and they could trust me.
Something as I mentioned at the top of the show, I've known Charles for a long time, and I'm constantly learning from him, especially recently because Online Video Mastery is now a partner with Drone Responders. one takeaway that comes up in this presentation he's done today, and I'd very much like to leave you all with, is this attitude of, I'm here to help. What can I do to help? That's something Charles repeats often in our own interpersonal interactions, and when he's in dealing with with the organizations that I'm part of and watching him, that is a constant. What can I do to help? I'm here to help. And I think if you adopt that attitude and then the practice of it, you will go far. This is something that I think is a really, really golden life lesson.
And Chuck, you said something we were discussing before. You said, the idea of if you're going out to help somebody with your hand out and you're only doing it for something in return, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, and it's not going to be successful. You need to be going out there and offering your assistance without any expectation. I will tell you that there will come a time when you need to ask the person that you helped, and they are more than willing to help you. And I've found that it's probably 10 times over what I could have initially imagined.
That's really great. Charles, did you have one more slide with your contact info?
Oh, yeah, I think I did. Yeah, so here I am. My email address is charles@droneresponders.org. If you've got a question about this or something else, I'll be glad to help. And again, thanks for being here and listening. And I hope that you got something out of it.
Yeah, go ahead and take a screenshot of that, you guys. I will be getting these slides out to anyone who's interested. You can just reach out to me or to Charles, and we'll make sure you get a copy of the slides. And this recording will be available on all of the platforms that we broadcasted to. One of the best ones is our Online Video Mastery YouTube channel. So you can head over there and check that out and review this video if you'd like to. So once again, I'd really like to thank my friend Charles for being here today. And with that, I'm going to close down the broadcast. Any of my students from the Video Creators Roadmap, we are going to continue with our video summer school. So hop on over to the Zoom link that I had provided earlier via email and in the Video Creators Roadmap. And I'll see you all over there in a few minutes.
Well, before you go, I just wanted to say this. I can't remember why I didn't say this, but one of the things that we're here talking about, and the reason we partnered with Drone Responders with Chuck, is that we're seeing how the videos are so powerful. And so in this day and age, if you take this program and become the person who can provide those quick videos to create recruitment videos, training videos, or awareness videos, you're going to become the superstar. So take advantage of this opportunity and knock them dead.
Appreciate that, Charles. You wrapped up exactly what our mission is, and we're here to help. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Appreciate everybody being here. Have a good afternoon.